here today to build this event. Good afternoon to one and all presented here. We are glad and privileged to have been offered the responsibility to host this event. I'm S. Karthik Shriram from second year Department of Computer Science and Business System.
I'm Vishmita from second year Department of Computer Science and Business System. Small cheer and great welcome makes a merry feast. To welcome us all on this beautiful day, I warmly welcome Akash Sudarshan Raja from the second year Department of Computer Science and Business System to deliver the welcome speech.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so wonderful to have you all here in this evening for Tech Talk on Reinventing the Web. I am G. Akash from second year Department of Computer Science and Business System. Welcome the challenges, look for the opportunities in every situation to learn and grow in wisdom. It's a glad welcome we being you this afternoon. Hopes and dreams all we share. I would like to extend a special welcome to our guest of honor, resource person, Jackie Tan, who will be speaking later. I am very delightful to welcome our chairperson, Mrs. K. Dhanalakshmi Ammal ma'am, our pro-chairman, Thiru R.S.K. Raghuram sir, respected principal, Dr. D. Vasudevan sir, head of Department, Computer Science and Business System, Dr. S. Pavalarajan sir, and our mentors and our students once again. We welcome you all from our beloved heart. Thank you.
To be inspired is great, but to be an inspiration is an honor. I am overview to invite Sweta from second year Department of Computer Science and Business System to introduce our chief guest.
Good afternoon to everyone. I am Shweta from second year Department of Computer Science and Business System. I am extremely overwhelmed to introduce our chief guest, Jackie Tan. Is a web developer and completed his Bachelor of Science at National University at Singapore and did his PhD in structural biology at Nanyang Technology University in Singapore. He is a head of Tribe Academy, which connects talents to Web2 and Web3 learning opportunities. He started his career by being a head of business development in Infocorp Technologies in Singapore. And also he trained 1,500 learners in online and offline workshops on hands-on data science projects. It is a well-known proverb that actions speak louder than the words. It is an honorable moment for our institution to have your prestigious presence in today's event. We all are truly inspired by your deeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Shweta. Sharing knowledge is the key to unlocking the power. My request our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Jackie Tan, sir, to share his knowledge. Now the session is yours, sir.
Hello, everyone. And all of you hear me? I'll just turn on my video so you can see me. Hello. Okay, I'm setting up the window screen in case anyone has questions that you want to ask. Okay, so hello everyone, and big thank you to the very warm welcome. I totally didn't expect this. Usually my workshops are a bit more low-key, right? Like no, I just jump straight to it. So thank you everyone. I see that there's a huge crowd gathering this evening. Well, it's quite a lot of people. Thank you everyone for appearing, right? For my little introduction to what Web3 is. So in this workshop, no, it's not really a workshop. In this talk, I will talk a bit about what Web3 is. Think of it as a gentle introduction into what Web3 is, okay? So don't worry about it. And we'll keep it casual and simple. Please ask questions. Please ask questions if you have any questions that you want to ask. Don't be shy, okay? We're all friends here. We're all on the same journey to learn about what Web3 is. Even for myself, even though I'm the one talking here, I learn new things every day. So again, don't hesitate to ask questions in the Q&A box or in the chat. I will pause and answer it if I can. Yes, I have a lot of warm welcome in the chat now. Thank you, everyone. So without further ado, let's begin. A little overview about what we're going to hear this evening. So a little introduction to myself and where I come from, AngelHack. And of course, introduction to Web3, right? We will answer the question of what is Web3. And for those of you who are interested in entering Web3, this is where I'll talk about where are the best places to enter, okay? And then, of course, what is a talk without a question answer session? So please, I mean, you guys can ask any questions during Q&A, just, type it out in the chat, type it on the Q&A box, and I'll answer it. And then, of course, if all of you love me and you want to hear more, I have, I don't know, just a bit more information after that. Okay. Okay, so what I like all of you to do is to pay attention at certain parts, because I will tell you, hey, look at the chat. Hey, look at the chat, and I'll share some information, or I'll be like, hey, please take this down, take notes or whatever. Or I'll be like, hey, take a screenshot of the screen that you're watching now so that you can look at it later. Because some of the information, like for example, I'll be pointing you guys to different places, and if you take note of it, it'll be very useful later on. Now, so so you might be right, you might be confused, you might not know what's up, but at the end of the talk, I hope you'll be feeling like this, okay, on the right. So yeah, let's begin. All right. A little bit about myself. Thank you to the hosts for the great introduction. You have done your homework. That's awesome. So indeed, I started off in doing life sciences in the National University of Singapore. I worked for a few years and then I did my PhD. It was the combination of, again, life sciences with a bit of data science. And I suffered for a few years before graduating. So for those of you who are thinking of doing PhD, I don't really encourage it. But anyways, so even though I was the head of academy in Tribe this year, I'm a product manager in AngelHack, and I'm a very passionate Web3 developer and educator, which is why I'm here this evening with all of you, right? I started a fintech company called Fund My Life when I was doing my PhD, sold it a couple of years later. I then started a data science edutech company after that, which I also sold. I was part of a blockchain company in around 2018. That was how I got started in the whole Web3 and blockchain space. And that journey was kind of interesting. We raised like $14 million. It was fun. Life was good. Then the market crashed. Then life wasn't that good anymore. For my work in entrepreneurship, I'm awarded Forbes 30 under 30, and I've been on various platforms giving talks all around the world. You might recognize TEDx. I've also spoken at Google on Web3. I've led projects on both machine learning and blockchain. I love simulation. I do a lot of simulation work on project mechanisms. And finally, I lecture as an adjunct professor in local university in both data science and entrepreneurship. So that's myself in a nutshell. Yeah, I guess don't have anything else to say about me. Kind of boring otherwise. And how about the wonderful AngelHack, where I currently work in? I see some of my colleagues in the chat, in the group. Thank you everyone for joining this to support me. So AngelHack is the world's largest and most diverse community of developers. We started off as doing a lot of hackathons, but we've gone into like things like incubation, we've gone into things like startup acceleration, boot camps, and a few other things which I'll be sharing later on. All right. Now, no matter what we do, we focus on empowering developers. And I think some of you in this group might be developers, aspiring developers. And our focus is on empowering folks like yourself with hands-on experiences. So hackathons, right? Of course, hang in there, like just a little teaser, right? Want to let you guys know that we are running some interesting things where you're able to not just learn, but also earn from learning, which is great, right? Like who gets paid to learn? It's amazing. So stick around, have a chat, and you'll find out soon enough what it is. Okay, so folks, what is Web3, right? To have Web3, it means there's Web2 and Web1, right? Simple as that. If there's, again, it's a kind of a joke, right? But I think before we get to understand what Web3 is, let's go back in time a little to understand how the internet came about. So let's travel back in time a little bit, right? The year is now 1990. This is where we commonly call the era kind of like Web 1.0. So back then, right, I think some of you might not have been born back then. I was born a year before this, so I'm kind of old, right? And back then we had very basic internet, right? How basic? Basic internet meant that we can only read things off the internet, meaning, right, we can only look at information that was displayed on the internet. It was very hard to interact. You can only go to pages, you can only read, and there wasn't much you can do. So this particular era, right, Web 1, was pretty much the start. And we call it the read-only era, right? So Web 1.0, right, Web 1 or whatever you call it, was read-only, meaning you can only read whatever that's displayed in front of you, and the information is static, right? What does static mean? Static means it doesn't change, right? So things don't change. Whatever you see is whatever you get in Web 1. So that's a kind of like a piece of history. I don't think many of you would have gone through that piece of history. It's good. Yeah, I say it's a good thing. Now, most of you would have known the internet as what it is today, which is the Web 2 era. Now, I hope you guys recognize the logos that you see over there. You see YouTube, Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Airbnb, right? So this was 10 years later, right? Around the 2000s, right? And then into 2010s. Now, what was special about this era, right, in the internet, Web 2, is that you can now start interacting with people online. When you have a Facebook account, you can create things. Well, what does it mean by that? You can create posts. You can post about your day. You can tag your friends. You can start interacting with the website, right? So as opposed to only looking at information on the internet, right, you can now interact with other people online. I know it sounds a bit silly, right? But it's a bit of a difference, right? If you think about it compared to the earlier days, suddenly you can now interact with people. What else? You can create things, you can create pictures, you can add. Now, in this era, we call it kind of like the interactive era, right? This is where you can interact with one another on the platforms. You can talk to your friends, you can share posts, you can list your home for rent by people on YouTube. You can create videos and upload it, right? This is great. Now, as you create all of these things, right? As you post, as you interact, where does all the data go? Where does all the data go? Anyone wanna like answer in the chat? So if I interact with someone on Facebook, if I like someone's post, where is all this information kept? Anyone? I'm frowning. Okay, thank you. Right, so the information that is generated from you is kept on Facebook itself, right? Meaning all of the data is kept in a central server, right? Central meaning, right, Facebook owns it, all of the information goes one direction and stays there, right? So this is an important part. Just take note of the term centralization, right? Centralized. And this is the same for all of the websites that you go to, right? For example, YouTube, right? All of your videos like that you create, that you watch, are all stored on YouTube's servers, right? So there's a huge implication from that. There's a huge like consequence of that, which I'll be sharing a bit later. But the general idea is that someone owns all of the data, right? It technically is you, right? Because you created it, but it's not really the case, as you see later on. So the downside about Web2 world, right, is that, for example, a few years ago, what was found was that 87 million Facebook users' data was exposed, and a company called Cambridge Analytica used all of data and in a way pushed Donald Trump to win. Now, this was when people started realizing, oh no, what are people doing with the data that I generate on the site? This was around like 2016, right? A few years later, I think people started wondering, is it such a good idea to have all of their data on a single server, for example, right? When you look at it, Facebook, even now, right, like Facebook has all the power to ban you, to, I don't know, Facebook has all of the data basically, right? If Facebook were to shut down one day, right, what will happen to all of your social network? Gone, just like that, right? Now, so this is quite a worrying thing. Now, another issue with the centralization of power, right, is that I'll give you a quick moment to take a look at the news article here. This happened last year, in fact. Now, what happened was, I could tell you a bit of story, right? What happened was that in Canada, there were people who were against the vaccines, right? And what happened was that the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, what he did was that he invoked the Emergencies Act and he froze protesters' bank accounts. This is kind of scary because now people see how the government can actually do things and you can't really do much about it, right? This is kind of scary. It's scary on a very, I guess, not direct way, right? Because if you don't really care, like there are people who don't really care about this, and that's fine, right? But then it's a question of like, at some point, you know, it will affect you one way or another. Imagine if the government like can freeze your bank account today. Who knows if the government gets hacked or whatever gets hacked, the bank may freeze your bank account, right? For no particular reason. Now, I highlighted the part where it says, with no need for court orders, banks can freeze personal accounts. Of course, it has to have, you know, you have to have a reason for it, right? Whether that reason is justified or not, that's an entirely different issue. But the thing is, here we see another consequence of centralization of power, meaning, right, whoever controls that central server gets to control everything, right? And in a way, there are people concerned about that in the late 2010s, and this is also why the whole Web3 movement started, right? So another interesting thing about Web2 technologies playing judge, jury, and the executioner is, you look at this, it says, this actually happened quite recently. Twitter was censoring people, actually. And for a platform that talks about sharing ideas and information, right, regardless of who these people are, it's also a bit kind of sad to see that Twitter actually has a list of people that they don't that they censor, right? In principle, okay, let's not talk about the contents of whatever these people say, right? It's kind of scary to think that how all these platforms have the power to censor you unknowingly, right? Just because they don't agree with you, right? So I know it sounds kind of serious, but actually it's not meant to be, right? But the idea is that these are things that you should think about. And that's also why Web3 started, basically as a kind of like a response against the centralization of power, right? Now, so Twitter, bad guy. Anyway, this person, the ex-Twitter official was being scolded like in the court for censoring the opinions. But I mean, these are some of the examples where having a central power is may not be the best. So this gives rise to the Web3, or I put Web 3.0, shame on me, it's supposed to be Web3, right? So in the late 2010s and early in the 2020s, right, you start seeing like Web3 technologies emerge. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that the idea is that you own your data. You own your data, meaning there's no central power that can own your data, right? So that data is not hackable. Okay, it's not hackable in theory, right? Like for example, in the Web3 world, banks, like an institution like a bank, cannot remove your account straight away, or you cannot get censored, right? In a way, it represents freedom. There's a lot of optimism as well. Now, how is Web3 different from Web2? So there's this idea of decentralization, right? So what is decentralization? On the left side, you see an example of a centralized institution, right? In the center, it could be a bank, it could be a school, it could be, I don't know, it could be anything. Now, another thing that I like to invite all of you to imagine, right, is that if your universities, okay, maybe not the best thing to say, but imagine you're a student in a particular school, right? And one day a hacker hacks your school's computer and changes your score to 0, right? Possible. It is possible, right, that a hacker who hates you might just hack the server and give you a 0 score. Is there anything you can do? Technically, not much, right? Simply because there's only one place where the data was stored, and there's nothing else you can do. However, right, in a decentralized world, this is slightly different. Your data can't be hacked as readily, and you also own the copy of the data. Now, how does it work? I'll talk a bit about it in a bit. But as you can see, right, I hope we all start seeing the differences between a centralized power and a decentralized network, right? So, for example, you see in the centralized, the central institution controls everything, right? You can see all the lines coming out of it. On the other hand, on the right, when you see the decentralized network, it seems that everyone has an equal share, right? And sorry, never mind. It's decentralized. Everyone has a piece of something. There's no central power, right? And the good thing about that is that you can't like, for example, if someone attacks, say, I don't know, someone in the network, right? Everyone else might not be affected, and this is through the power of blockchain. So how do we implement a decentralized network, right? So how do we decentralize our lives into Web3? So this is the part where we talk about the technology that's underlying the Web3 movement, which is introducing blockchain. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go too deeply into the technology itself, just maybe some introductory concepts into why and how blockchain technology can be used to implement a decentralized world. Now, so what is blockchain? When you talk about blockchain, right, this is what you probably think of, right? A block that's chained together. Actually, this is pretty accurate. I know it sounds a bit silly, right? But this is on an abstract level. If you were to draw a blockchain, right, this is what it will look like. You have blocks with chains in between, and blocks. I know it sounds silly, but technically this is how it works. But let me break it down even further, right? Now, within each block, you have the data to be stored inside the block. You have the identity of the block, which is the hash. Again, if you're not familiar with what a hash is, don't worry about it. Just think of it as an ID, right? ID number, whatever. Now, your block also contains the ID of the previous block. So 3 things. One is, and all blockchains work the same way. Usually it contains the data itself that it's trying to store. It contains its own ID and the ID of the block before that. And after that, so for example, right, here we have, let's just call it OX1234, right, the first block. And it is chained to the second block, which is OX5678. Now, within that block, you have information that you want to store inside the block, but also the previous identity of the block, right? And then you do this for many, many chains ahead. But the idea is that each block will have a reference to the block before that, and each of them are in a way you can't fake it, right? If you change the block in the middle, the block at the front will know it, and the block at the back will know it as well, right? Of course, I'm oversimplifying quite a few things, but that's the general idea. So first of all, you get your blocks of information chained together into a link. And then, oh yeah, this is blockchain, tada. Yeah, it's pretty simple to kind of like look at it this way. But of course, let's take it one step further and decentralizing it by distributing it to everyone. So everyone in your network has a copy of these blocks. Now, what's the implication of having everyone in the network have these blocks? First of all, what happens is that every time you want to add a new block, right, you compare everyone's blocks and see if they're all the same. Meaning, right, because this is distributed, everyone's blocks have to be the same. Otherwise, if you have maybe one guy, right, over here, his block is not the same, what happens is that this block will be deemed fake and the rest will be like, hey, you should follow our blocks instead, right? So this is how you prevent things like hacking or like fraudulent behavior or even errors in the chain, right? By having everyone in the network participative, right, as mentioned earlier, you now have a decentralized way of storing information. Now, this is good because first of all, it's hard to fake the data. As mentioned, if you have someone who fakes the data, the rest of the network can still say, hey, compare our blocks. Turns out yours is different from ours, so yours is fake. Delete yours, take ours, right? Immutable, okay, immutable, right, means you cannot change it because once information is recorded on the blockchain, you can never change it, right? You can't remove the blocks that chain together. Another word is called provenance. Provenance means, right, provenance is, okay, all these fancy words, right? Actually, it's not meant to be that fancy. The idea is that provenance means you know which block belongs to who, right? So this way you can prove some sort of ownership. Yeah, so three great features of blockchain technology that enables decentralization, right? Now, I'll invite all of you to take one step further, right, and rotate the blocks sideways, because at the end of the day, right, if you can store information onto each block, you can think of it as having one row of data each. So each block is one row of data, right? If each row is one row of data, meaning one transaction, you can think of everyone having the same Excel sheet together, right? And if everyone has the same Excel sheet together, they all share the same database, it also means that you can start doing interesting things, right? And of course, the most interesting thing that came out of blockchain technology is issuing your own money, right? Because you're able to now track every single dollar that moves within your network, you can now issue your own currency. And this is how cryptocurrency came about, because now everyone has the same kind of like accounting sheet, right? And each row, everyone agrees, and there's no way of faking it, right? And by doing that, you're now able to issue out your own money, right? Simply because you can keep track of all of currency, keep track of all the transactions that happen within your network. So this is kind of like an image to show you the variety of currencies within the world right now. And in fact, this is in a way slightly outdated because there's a lot of new currencies out there and there are more being created every single day. Pretty exciting. There are just lots of this. Now you might be wondering what's the difference between each of these different blockchain companies, right? So the way you can think about it is, for example, most of the time, fundamentally, all the blockchains are the same, but how they add new blocks to the chain is different. How they agree with each other is different. So each blockchain will have their own respective way of agreeing with each other and also adding new blocks to the blockchain. But don't worry about this. If this is your first time hearing about Web3 and blockchain, I wouldn't worry too much about it. There's always room to kind of like study on your own later on, right? But the idea is that the differences between all these blockchains are quite, it really just differs in the way that they add new blocks and agree with each other, okay? In fact, when you take a step back, you look at let's pick one ecosystem, right? By this blockchain called Ethereum, right? Within the Ethereum ecosystem, you have literally hundreds of more applications built on that particular blockchain, and it can be quite overwhelming. So if you've ever tried learning about blockchain and Web3, right, you will be overwhelmed by the amount of information out there. Anyone tried doing that before and felt like you're kind of lost? Anyone? Can see me in the chat. Yeah, right. So it's understandable because I think because of how new the technology is, how new the space is, everyone's always trying to write something about it, sharing the experience, and yeah, it's pretty scary, right? So what's the best way to be a part of this new and exciting world? I have a few recommendations. It's not, I mean, whatever I say may not be applicable maybe 1 year from now, who knows, right? Because of how fast things move. But fundamentally, the way you get yourself started is relatively okay. I think for me, I say it's simple because I can read. I like to read, right? So it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier picking up and entering the Web3 world when you can read. Oh, okay, sorry, sounds a bit wrong. But the idea is that there's a lot of information to take in, and it's kind of a rabbit hole. Like Web3 has been described as a rabbit hole because the more you learn, the deeper you go, and the deeper you go, the more you learn, and the more you learn, the deeper you go. And sometimes it's kind of hard to tell whether you've learned enough. So so for those of you who are interested in this space, right, I recommend that you get started with a few of these pieces. So I'm also going to assume that you guys are all all coders, right? If you're all okay, you might want to take a snapshot of this. You might want to like take a screen cap of these various platforms. I will briefly talk about them right now. So do pay attention if you're curious about these places. Stack up in short. I'll talk a bit more about Stack Up in a bit. But the idea is that Stack Up, right, is a place where you can learn and earn. Meaning, right, you learn about Web3, you do quizzes, you submit proof that you've learned about Web3, you get a bit of money. So it ranges anywhere from like 1 to 15 US dollars, right? It's pretty exciting. Who here has heard of Stack Up before? Anyone? Okay, so surely has heard of it. So for those of you, right, who who are curious, do be part of the AngelHack community. We'll share links, hang around. I think, do we have, we'll follow up with more information, I suppose. So don't put our emails in spam, okay? Make sure you read our emails. Alchemy University is a free resource to learn about 3 things. Web3 itself, Solidity, the language required to execute code on blockchain, and finally JavaScript. So if you are looking to build stuff, Alchemy University is where I would recommend beginners. Rabbit Hole is the same. Rabbit Hole has a selection of material that you can read. So what they do, right, is that they summarize a lot of things into a single Notion page. You can head on to Rabbit Hole's introduction to Web3, and once you go through the the material there, right, you should be more or less quite well equipped. Build Space is another pretty good community where you learn about Web3 and you build stuff, right? That's why it's called Build Space, right? They focus a lot on building, meaning, right, they host challenges, code. Okay. So for those of you on the chat, right, please, if you're curious about learning and earning, check out StackUp in the URL below, in the chat. You click on it, and guess what? If you don't sign up now, right, you won't be able to sign up another time, because you will need a kind of like a code, right? A sign up code. We do that to prevent people from like spamming, right? So AngelStack 0222, that's the code that you need to take note of. So once again, please take note of what you see in the chat. Screen cap if you have to, save it, copy it, whatever, right? Now, Crypto Zombies is a fun game where you can learn how to develop smart contracts, meaning code that you can execute on the Ethereum blockchain. This is one way you can get started if you want to learn more about the coding aspect. Layer 3, the thing on the right side, that is also a combination of both. You can learn to build, you can kind of like learn a bit about Web3 stuff as well, and you can get rewarded. Not exactly money, not money all the time. Unlike StackUp, you get rewarded in points. Yeah, it's just nice to have points, I guess, right? So what else? What else do I have to say about learning on Web3? There are many other resources, of course, but let's see. Did I miss anything? Yeah, I think pretty much these are the kind of like the main resources you can look at. Of course, there are also other things you can get yourself started on Web3 if you're curious. So as mentioned, StackUp. So Developer Quest allows you to learn and earn, and they're curated pathways. So I think a big problem for a lot of people when it comes to learning, right, about say Web3 or coding or anything, right, is that like what are the best resources to use, right? So the good thing is that the StackUp folks, what they've done is that they've created a learning pathway, meaning step 1, learn this, step 2, learn this, step 3, learn this, so on and so forth. And that way, right, you know that you're on the right track. So that's pretty cool. Now, of course, another way you can learn a fair bit about Web3 is through, of course, AngelHack. I have to say this because I come from AngelHack, but seriously, AngelHack, as its name suggests, is a place where you can compete for prizes through hackathons, right? What are hackathons? Hackathons are virtual competitions. Could be in person, could be virtual. These days, it's a lot more virtual. Virtual hackathons that last over a month, right? You try to build something, and you try to earn prizes. What could those prizes be? Those prizes could range anywhere from 1,000 to 30,000 USD, right? If you build well. Of course, if the competition is a bit too daunting, AngelHack also hosts bounties. So what are bounties? Bounties are just when you play games, right? When you play video games, imagine there are quests that you can do, right? So this can be creating content. It could be writing an article, writing a code guide, could be doing a video of yourself, learning how to code, for example. So these are the things that we reward our community members over in AngelHack. So if you are keen, do join us on our Discord channel. AngelHack bot, you may share the Discord channel. So basically, these two platforms that you see over here, firstly, StackUp and AngelHack, they're wonderful resources for you to get started. Of course, there are many resources out there, as mentioned, but the ones that I mentioned earlier and these two are kind of like some of the best places you can start learning, right? Think about it, you guys are here because of an AngelHack event, right? So in a way, this kind of shows that we're good. Yeah, anyways, just want to hype AngelHack up. And we will continue to host more of these events in the future. So if you stay as part of the AngelHack community, you will get exposure to more interesting and exciting Web3 stuff as well. So yeah, so that's pretty much it, right? Yeah, Web3 was kind of fun, right? Like where else can you really get to learn things and get to be paid at the same time? Pretty cool. Yeah, and on this note, we are pretty much done. I tried to keep this simple, and I left a bit more time for Q&A so that folks who are slightly a bit more advanced can also ask questions as well. So I'm gonna open the floor now to the participants to ask questions, right? Through the chat box or that Q&A, the Q&A box. So don't leave just yet. Please do ask questions, and I'll do my best to answer them right now. Okay, so let's see. All right. So what are some programmatic concepts to learn for a beginner to get into Web3, right? And second question is, what program languages does Web3 use? So if you're a developer, right, you want to get started, I would recommend learning JavaScript. I hope you guys know JavaScript, right? So either JavaScript or Node or TypeScript. So TypeScript and JavaScript are very popular, and you can get started quite easily. Because once you're familiar with JavaScript, you can move on to things like Solidity. So maybe I'm just gonna like type it out here. Okay, so languages to learn, JavaScript, and Solidity. Okay, so on Q&A, right? Erwin, thank you for your question. The question is, what are the roles available in Web3 for non-developers? So I've talked quite a fair bit about developers, right? And actually for the Web3 world, right, there's a lot of room for non-developer roles. So what are they, right? What are they? So things like, say, for example, in the Web3 world, there's a strong focus on community, right? So there's a huge demand for community managers for communities in the Web3 space. So that's one. Two, developer relations. So for those of you who do development but prefer to talk to developers instead, can do developer relations to help Web3 companies grow. Things like marketing, the usual stuff that you find in Web2. But in Web3, what I find special are two pretty unique roles. One is community manager for community management, and developer relations to help Web3 companies grow, right? So I'll just post that in the Q&A. So in case you guys want to revisit it, you can. Okay, anyone else has questions to ask, please don't Please don't be shy. We got plenty of time. What are the roles of AI in blockchain? Aha, okay, that's a very good question. Um, Anonymous attendee who asked about that. Thank you so much. This is a fantastic question. A few years ago, right? A few years ago, if you ask me what are the roles of AI in blockchain, I would tell you not much, simply because back then, right, there's not enough data generated. But these days, right, because of how increasingly popular blockchain is, you have a lot of different blockchain companies, and each of these blockchain companies, right, generate tons of data each day, right? So what are the things you can do with the blockchain data? First of all, right, you can predict. Okay, as usual, you can predict trends, right? But what else can you predict? You can predict things like fraud, right? Fraud means, like for example, if I'm a scammer, right, and I have a scam account, you can be discovered through leveraging machine learning or data analytics using the blockchain data. Last year, I supervised a master's student, right, who was doing his master's in data science, right? I was supervising him, and the topic that we were going for, right, was predicting scam tokens using blockchain data, which is kind of cool, right? So we are seeing more and more of these like projects where we leverage on-chain data to predict pretty cool stuff. Of course, we can do things like predict value, whether things go up and down, so on and so forth. I hope that answer your question. Predictive. Okay, so send. Okay, well, one of my tips for absolute beginners to get started with Web3, again, do check out those sites that you just saw and start reading. Reading is very important, as with all things, right? So just pick a platform, start reading, or you can talk to people. Okay, let's see. Obstacles. Okay, how do non-developers break into Web3? I would recommend the same. Oh wait, no, I would recommend Rabbit Hole. I'll recommend Rabbit Hole and Stack Up to read. So I'm just gonna type. I recommend Rabbit Hole, Layer 3, and Stack Up. Let's see. Absolute tips. Okay, go for those. Can I talk a bit about fungible and non-fungible tokens? Should I? Okay, yeah, what the hell? Why not, right? Okay, so for those of you who asked about NFTs, right, give me a second. I'm just gonna like do something, all right? Haha, bonus. Give me a second. So for those of you who are curious about NFTs, here's a bonus lecture. I don't know, you guys want to do it? Give me a yes in the chat if you want. No? All right. Okay, so I'll do a quick one. Slideshow time. Okay, I knew people would ask about NFTs. That's why I prepared this in case. All right, so without further ado, what are NFTs? NFT stands for non-fungible tokens, right? Again, when it's confusing, especially if you haven't come across this word, what fungible means, right? So fungible means mutually interchangeable, means if I have one fungible token, the value is the same with another fungible token. And then non-fungible means if I one thing, it's not the same as the other thing from the same category. Now, what are tokens? Tokens can be anything digital. It could be a file, it could be a picture, it could be a music, it could be anything, really. And tokens, just think of it as a digital format file. Now, fungible things, right, are things like gold. Means if you have one goal and you have another goal, boom, you get two gold, right? Those are fungible assets. Now, on the other hand, right, non-fungible tokens, right, are like images. You have one picture and another picture, you put them together, you can't combine them into a single thing, right? On the other hand, if you have two gold bars, you get, no, if you add two single gold bars together, you get two gold bars. So there are many different types of NFTs out there. So it could be things like artwork with a particular value. It could be a collectible, like how, like you guys collect jerseys of your favorite soccer players or your cricket players or whatever, right? So same thing digitally, if you own digital items of the team of your choice, that's also kind of like you can collect it as an NFT. Another thing that's pretty popular is profile pictures, right? Or PFPs for short. This is from a very popular collection called Doodles, right? And each of them are worth I think right now, like, still few thousands USD, right? Each image that you see over here. Quite a mind-blowing, but that's, I guess, NFT for you. Memes, if you like memes, memes have a particular value to it. In fact, you can sell memes. Like if you made the meme from a long time ago, you can actually sell it as a form of NFT, right? Just because, it's a digital asset. This is another pretty popular meme as well. Digital real estate, meaning digital land. This was pretty popular back then, not so much anymore. Basically, if you play online game, for example, if you play online game, right? If you play World of Warcraft, imagine if you could own land on World of Warcraft. So this is how you can think about it. And your ownership can be represented as a form of NFT. Skip. Tickets. So there are people who explore ticketing, right, using NFTs. So if you have an NFT, you have a ticket to a particular event. So this NFT series of NFT allows the owner to enter very exclusive events. And the reason why you can do this, right, is because remember when we take a few steps back, right, when you look at blockchain, right, the information recorded on the blockchain can prove who owns what. So ticketing is a good use case because if you have an NFT, right, your ownership of it is recorded on the blockchain, which is great. Skip. Yep, that's pretty much kind of like a 101 on NFTs. I hope that answers your question. Oh, yep. Okay, so what other questions are there? Let me just check the Q&A box. Can you create? Okay, Sutha asked an excellent question. Can I create my own blockchain with my laptop? The answer is hell yeah. Okay, I mean, in theory, you can. In fact, when you Google online, right, you can actually see tutorials teaching you how to implement your own blockchain. Yep. So, okay, that's one. Next, what else? What other hidden slides do I have? I will only unlock them when you ask the right questions. Told you guys to stick around, right? Okay, let me scroll a bit to look at the other questions which I didn't manage to ask. What's the difference between Bitcoin and Ethereum? How would I describe it to an absolute beginner? That's a fantastic question. So, as with all technology, imagine you have fundamentally they are both blockchains, except, okay, when we talk about the differences between blockchain, right, you have to think about differences in speed, differences in basically speed, and how environmentally friendly they are, and how long it takes for you to do transactions on it. So when you want to talk about the difference between, say, Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Bitcoin, think of it as a diesel lorry. Ethereum, you can think of it as a Ferrari, a fast car, right? Okay, it's not that fast, but you get the idea. What are the obstacles and challenges of Web3? Actually, the obstacles and challenges are more the why, right? So right now, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of reason why people should move into Web3 other than the fact that there's money to be made there. There's still a lot of problems in this world that don't really need Web3 yet. So it'll be a while before like Web3 picks up, but we're at a good time where those who move fast will benefit definitely in 2 years from now. Okay, so let's see what else. What other questions are there? All right, 2 new Q&A. How can blockchain technology be used to improve supply chain management? Okay, that's a good question. Now, for those of you, right, who are looking at Q&A right now, there's a question on supply chain management. So I need to talk a bit about supply chain, right? What is supply chain? Supply chain refers to, you guys buy things online? Okay, I hope you guys, okay, so if you buy things online, right, from a online shop, what happens? Online shop will have to send the item to you, correct? So that your parcel will have to go through many different places. So this is what we call kind of like a supply chain, right? Logistics. It moves from one place to another. Supply chain refers to the logistics involved when you want to move, like, say, raw material, right? Could be things like fruits from one country to another. Could be oil from one country to another. Could be moving, could be simple as moving items from one factory right down to your doorstep. The problem with supply chain sometimes is very hard to record whether it's a real thing or not. Because sometimes in supply chain, right, you have a lot of fake items, right? Fake food, fake goods. And there's no way of knowing whether they are real unless there's a way to record that they truly exist, right? And how else to do this other than using blockchain, right? If you record the existence of a particular product on the blockchain, you know that it exists and it's legit. So that's one way how supply chain management can be improved using blockchain, right? Okay. Sorry, I'm typing the answer in the Q&A. So Karthik asks, how do you see blockchain technology and Web3 evolving in the future? So two things are gonna happen. One is more and more blockchain companies will emerge. That's not a bad thing, right? Because competition is good. But I also see one day, right, where the technology is so widespread that we don't really talk about a blockchain product as a blockchain product anymore. It's just a product, which is great, right? So that's what I'm hopeful. What are some potential risks or limitations associated with using blockchain technology? The limitation, right, actually is, I guess, if you look at it, it's two things. One is the fact that it's still quite complex, right? It's complex in theory, like the idea of the technology itself is complex, right? But actually, more importantly, is the idea of decentralization, which is what where it's used most often. Like, how do you explain decentralization to maybe your parents, right? How do you explain decentralization to your grandpa, for example? So one major obstacle will be explaining the concept to people such that they get it and they trust it enough, right? Actually, the limitations are not technological, it's more on people. So I've been asked, what are some of the other industries that Web3 has already affected other than financial? So off the top of my head, other than financial, right, supply chain is actually one of those places that benefited from blockchain technology. Um, right now, most of the use cases are still in very unsexy places, like but beyond that, right, when you talk about NFTs, right, we have some big brands adopting NFTs, right? Like for example, NFL, Adidas, right? So these are some of the consumer brands have begun exploring NFTs and to a certain extent blockchain technology, which is quite encouraging. What are my views on centralized exchanges when so I think no matter what, right? Call me cynical or whatever, because even though in theory decentralization sounds great, right? There's always a desire for people to want to centralize power. So in a few decades, we might see decentralization somehow becoming centralized again, which is inevitable, I think. Sad, but that's life, I guess. Thank you for your question, Hazel. Okay, let's see. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna end it here since there doesn't seem to be any more questions. But I would, oh, one last question before I, okay, so Jaya asked, thank you, Jaya, for your question. How can Web3 be used to create new business models or disrupt existing ones? Right, so this is interesting, right? Because when, let me think what's the best example of this. Okay, decentralization slash Web3, right, has a lot of usage in the creator economy, meaning, right, for example, your musicians, your artists, so on and so forth. In the past, right, they had to go through a single platform. So for example, what I mean, for creators, they would have to go through platforms like, for example, let's talk about Twitch, right? So Twitch takes a lot of the money, right? Leaving a portion of it for the streamers, the creators, so on and so forth. But the Web3 version would be the creators themselves getting tipped directly, meaning, right, a central platform would not survive in a decentralized world, right? Simply because we incentivize and we value the creators in the Web3 world directly, right? So no more central middleman to take all of the money. You kind of like reward your creators directly. Okay, before I hand the mic over back to the host, AngelHack board, would you like to share the links to the StackUp platform and the Discord community again for more opportunities to, like, learn, build, and earn? Okay, and on this note, actually, how do I give it back to the host? Okay, I'm pretty much done.
Thank you, sir. As we express our gratitude, I would like to call upon Vishnu from second year to deliver the vote of thanks.
It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the vote of thanks for the event to all dignified assembled here. My heart goes out to thank our respected chief guest, Mr. Jackie Tan, product manager at a tribe, and AngelHack. Honored this webinar with inspirational thoughts. Thank you, sir. I extend my thanks to our chairperson, Mrs. K. Dhanalakshmi Ammal, our pro chairman, to the RSK Raghuram sir, respected principal, Dr. D. Vasudevan sir, for granting permission to conduct this webinar. Next, I would like to thank the torch barrier of this webinar, our beloved professor and head of our department, Dr. S. Pavlarajan sir, and the mentors for leading and inspire us to working towards the goal of conducting this webinar. I also wish to thank the student for your kind and passion listening towards this webinar. Once again, I thank you all.
Thank you, sir.